Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the This Week in Hollywood podcast. We have a huge number today, episode 20. That is 10 more than 10. Really getting through these. Hopefully we'll have something big for the 26th episode, as that will be our half of a year mark, and then definitely something big for the year mark when we get there, if we get there. But as of course, I'm your host, Adam Robson, joined by my great co-host, Reese Wiegman.
I don't like you when you keep saying if we get there. Like, I feel like we have to have a
All
little
right,
bit of
when
stronger
we get there.
self-talk, self-assurance, keep the momentum going.
We have
Don't
we
doubt
have not
ourselves.
missed. You know what? You're right. We're 20 weeks in, have not missed a week. Now, sure, we've had some days where they're going to be, a day after they're supposed to on a Tuesday. Things come up, but we've been consistent for 20 weeks. I think that's something to be proud of.
I would say so.
Let's keep that gravy train rolling. As of always, we are going to be jumping into a great review of Scream. Love to hear what Reese has to say about this. We both put this on our Mount Rushmore horror movies. Horror interesting films this week. A Haunting in Venice is coming out. Definitely going to be checking that out. Probably not for next episode, but maybe the episode after. I'm consistent with these episodes. It might be a little iffy for next week. We will figure something out, though, so expect maybe a very late episode for next week. I'm not quite sure yet, but after covering this last week on the podcast with the trailer for Haunting in Venice, I'm very excited for this, and I still plan on seeing it.
Yes, I am planning to see this as well. I know I've made a lot of promises recently about movies I will be going to see and have not been following up on that, but I do see myself hitting the theaters quite a bit this week, so I think I'm going to try to fit A Haunting in Venice in there. Not the top priority this week. I think the top priority this week for me is getting to finally see Bottoms. I want to see Bottoms really bad, and I haven't gotten to see that yet. But also, Gran Turismo is still playing.
You got to. I'm telling you,
playing in theaters. So those are kind of my three that I have circled, but I don't have tickets for any of them yet. However, I do have tickets on Saturday to go see at the AMC Burbank 16. Don't dox me. The Dark Knight is playing in theaters, and I was like, I can't pass that up.
And they are not showing it around here. It was a huge shame. They're not showing that. I would love to go see that movie. I would even do because I think it's Batman Day on the 16th, right?
Is it? I don't know.
I think that's why they're doing it. I saw a theater chain that's like in New England is showing all three back to back. I would love to do that, but nothing around St. Louis is doing that. But yeah, that would be awesome to go see. Very excited for you.
Yes, I couldn't pass it up. And when I got tickets yesterday, I think, that being Monday, and the show's on Saturday. I think there's only one screening that day, but it was like almost sold out. I got one of like the last like 5 tickets left in this giant auditorium, which is pretty crazy for a movie. And The Dark Knight's still a prolific film, but for a movie that's however many years old, for it to sell out like a week in advance, is remarkable.
One of the best of all time, in my opinion. I would love to hear what the theater going experience is like with that film next week. So definitely try and remember how it was, and let me know. I want to know if there's going to be cheering, since it's not a new movie. I'm assuming there's going to be everybody that's going to see it has definitely already seen it. So you got to figure there's going to be a lot of cheering for Heath Ledger on screen, and very excited to hear about that.
I can't wait for that. I think they're doing a revival screening of Christine, John Carpenter's movie Christine.
Okay.
Which is for the 40th anniversary, and I really like Christine a lot, and so that's one to go check out. But it's not on A-list, so I'm probably not going to go hit it. So
I'm going to be honest. I wish we had an AMC around here, because A-list is one of my, I think, favorite movie going subscription
really great
subscription kind of things. If you can get one, if there's an AMC near you, I definitely recommend it. Huge bang for your buck. If you even go see like 1 or 2 movies a month, it pays for itself. Miss doing that in college because there used to be an AMC right next to me.
Right on.
Anything else you are looking forward to seeing upcoming?
I don't think I'm gonna hit The Nun 2. I don't know. I might. That's like a dark. Like I might just like go see that on a whim if I really want to late one night. But I haven't ever seen the first Nun, and I don't really love the Conjuring movies, so that would be more just a just to go see a horror movie, I suppose. But
Yeah.
we'll see. I'm not. Yeah, whatever.
Might have to leave those for October. Speaking
Right.
of October and scary movies, though, even though it isn't October,
Wow.
Scream. That is the movie this week. We are back on the wheel finally. We've been alluding to this wheel for weeks, and we are finally back after our summer blockbusters and our recommends weeks, and it landed on Scream. I'm very excited to talk about this. We definitely are going to go into some spoilers, so you are getting your spoiler warning right now to skip ahead. I would definitely recommend it. I would assume most people have seen it at this point, but just in case you haven't, revived the horror and the slasher genre, in my opinion. A lot of modern movies owe a lot to this. I know Reese loves this movie. I kind of want you to take the lead on this with you being the horror guy. But we'll see where it goes. Right off the bat, we got to talk about Drew Barrymore being in the movie for maybe 5 minutes. Huge billing at the time. I think she was number one billed when it came out, and to kill her off immediately, a shock. Gotta be.
Yes, and this is one of my favorite things. I love whenever movies do this. This is like clearly an homage to Psycho, whenever Hitchcock killed off the titular, or not the titular character, but the main character in that film right off the bat. And then Drew Barrymore was on top of all of the marketing material. Like, I'm pretty sure Neve Campbell, like, she wasn't like even on the poster, right? And so no one saw Neve Campbell as being, the person who's going to be leading this film. I never thought it was a Drew Barrymore flick. And so you go in there and you watch this first 12 minutes, which is just masterful. I mean, the first 12 minutes are just incredible, up there for one of the best scenes in horror history. I think a good horror movie, its intro sequence should be able to stand alone as its own short film. And Scream is like no better example of that. It just, you could have from the beginning up to the intro where the title sequence comes in, and that you could put that out and that would be a perfect movie all on its own for those 12 minutes. So yeah, those 12 minutes are incredible. And then Drew Barrymore is gone. And that just gives you such a cool sense of the unknown whenever you're going to the rest of the movie, because no one's safe, because you just thought that this was a Drew Barrymore movie, and now Drew Barrymore's freaking gone. So like anything could happen. Anybody could die. And that's just something that can't happen anymore, right? Because now with the internet, all that stuff gets spoiled, where before this could be in theaters for weeks and you don't have that spoiled for you ever.
Exactly. Yeah. And and it's definitely something that's kind of left the modern cinema, the idea that your main characters aren't safe, which is something this movie sets up great, again, with killing off your top billing. But nowadays, at least for me, when I go to a movie, I kind of get almost, I wouldn't say bogged down, but almost taken out when they're like, oh, is the main character going to survive this ordeal? And I'm like, well, we're 40 minutes in. You're not going to kill her off at the 40-minute mark. There's no way. So, yes, she's clearly going to survive. Get on with this. Let's keep moving. But, yeah, with this, right off the bat, and I've got to say, again, we are in spoilers. I'm hoping you've already clicked off. But the fact that there are two killers, it makes it very plausible of all the things that happen, especially in that opening sequence of moving her boyfriend outside when the lights go off and turning the lights off and then being at different areas of the house at the same time. And then another thing that I love, and this movie, in Scream in general, I think definitely kicked this off, and best example of it is the killer that isn't unstoppable. Like, he's Ghostface, and he's going to get some kills, but he's fumbling around. He's getting thrown downstairs. He's getting doors slammed on his head. It's like, yeah, they would put up a fight. Clearly, Ghostface is going to get a kill and get you eventually, but like, he's not Michael Myers that just walks through everything immediately, never phased. And I love that kind of realism that it gives him.
Yeah, it's just kind of, that's a very good example of the deconstruction and just a self-awareness of Scream in relation to all the slashers that have come before this. Because, I mean, Scream totally revitalized, and you could even say saved the horror genre. Now, something eventually was going to come along and save horror and bring horror back to the mainstream. But like, horror was not cool in 1996. This is when like Halloween 7 was coming out and Jason Takes New York. Yeah, so like no, it was just all these, the 7 sequels and these like long-standing series. Like they weren't cool anymore. It wasn't cool to go see these things. And so then whenever you go see this movie, they kill off their main character, or who presumably the actress you're going to see this thing. She
Yeah.
dies in the first 12 minutes, and you see this slasher, this killer who is fumbling around and acting like a fool a little bit, and is talking, by the way. Most of the time, these slashers aren't talking. Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, these are not people who you ever get dialogue from. So to see those two, conventions broken right off the bat, that's exciting. That is fun. And so that's just straight juice from the get-go into the top of this film, and it only delivers further from there.
Yeah, and speaking of a killer that talks, the horror pop trivia question that is now on every single trivia night ever of who's the killer in the first Halloween. It's not Jason, it's his mother. Great intro to this. It makes sense. And then we get our main cast, which I have to say, going back and watching this, just seeing how well these performances hold up, especially in my opinion, Neve Campbell's great. Courtney Cox is great as Gail Weathers as well. But Matthew Lillard and Jamie Kennedy make this movie for me as Stu and Randy. They work so well together and separate. I think Matthew Lillard is very underrated, in my opinion, in Hollywood. I know some people talk about his performance in this being a little over the top, and I do think there are some points in this where he goes a little too much, but then you get some great scenes at the end when he's been stabbed and Billy hits him with the phone, and he's just like, "You hit me with the phone, dick!" And it's like, that's what you need in this. Like, the killers at the end being turned into bumbling idiots that we've seen before. My mom's gonna kill me. These classic lines that are just perfectly done.
Yeah, Matthew Lillard. It's like you almost kind of forget that Matthew Lillard's in this movie, even though he's obviously such a big part of it. But I feel like now he's so much more associated with like Scooby Doo, even like 13 Ghosts, and so many other people come out of Scream. Neve Campbell, David Arquette, Courtney Cox are just like who you think of immediately. You almost kind of forget Matthew Lillard's in this thing, and he really elevates every scene he's in such a way that only Matthew Lillard can do.
Yes.
What stands out to me is like whenever they're in the video store and kind of just the dialogue, the back and forth between him and Randy about the rules of horror films.
Yep.
And just the things that the voice inflections he's doing, the things he's doing with his face just gives such life to what is more or less some like well disguised expository dialogue, and he just makes it so interesting and so engaging. The way he rolls his eyes and repeats things a couple times, it's really very subtly masterful while being over the top at the same time.
But he as well is great in this. I mean, both of them work so well as the killer.
And one thing I just want to mention really quick before I forget about it is whenever we first see Billy and he comes into Sydney's room for the first time, climbs through the window, and they're in there, and that slowed down version of Don't Fear the Reaper starts playing. I just absolutely love that because it gives away the whole thing, right? That gives away that he's the killer. When she's in there and they're playing Don't Fear the Reaper, but it's a slow down version of the song, that cover, and you never get to the point of the song where it says Don't Fear the Reaper. It's just Romeo and Juliet are together in eternity. So it sounds like a love song. It sounds like this melancholy love song that's playing, but it's Don't Fear the Reaper. I think that's so well done. It's disguising that right in plain sight if you don't clue into it. I think that's like one of the best uses of soundtrack in horror for sure.
Yeah, and definitely a lot of like, I don't know if I call them Easter eggs, but hidden things in it, just like that. And then also, obviously, shout out to the Fonz playing the principal. When he gets killed, he walks out of his office and you see Wes Craven, the director, dressed up as Freddy Krueger as the janitor. That's just so funny to see. Again, more trivia that's always talked about this movie. This has become such a staple in modern horror. It almost like plays on itself, and especially thinking to the Scary Movie franchise that spoofs the horror movies, and like their whole first movie is basically just redoing Scream.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy to think because like Scream already is doing what Scary Movie does. Scary Movie's just doing it like so much more obviously, and like and not trying to be a real movie. And so it's really kind of interesting that works. That'd be like if somebody now was like spoofing Deadpool. It's like, well, why are you even doing that? It's like I was thinking about that. It's really funny to lens. But yeah, it's the way that they are teasing what's going to happen seconds, minutes, sometimes scenes before it's going to happen. But they like anytime there's any major beat that's going to come up, it is like immediately teased and given away just prior. But you'd think that you don't catch it, or you think they're being too obvious with it, and you're like, well, that's not going to happen, and then it does happen. But you're always second guessing yourself. But it's like it's really giving away all its tricks the whole time, and it just lets your mind kind of run wild.
Yeah, and it's fun, like, having seen this multiple times and on rewatching it, like, seeing those links. Like, the beginning of the movie, Randy's in the video store yelling, everybody's a suspect. And at the end of the movie, Nev Campbell can't trust anybody and locks people out of the house. And then I think the biggest one of that is when Randy's watching Halloween on the TV and he's like, oh, don't go in there. And he's talking out the scene as Ghostface is behind him coming up. And it's like almost the absolute perfect satire that you could write while still being a horror slasher movie. And I especially like how throughout the whole film, obviously we get some of that, as we were talking, like the Ghostface killer bumping, being a bit of an idiot, but eventually getting to the kill they're trying to get to. And at the end of the movie, it just devolves into this almost comedic chase around the house where you can just imagine in your mind Billy and Stu switching out the costumes to come out of one way and pretend they're hurt, and then the other guys in the Ghostface costume and they switch again and they're everywhere at once. And it's like thinking about just the ridiculous setup that would go into that is kind of part of the fun in watching this almost.
Yes, and I want to go back to something you said, and I think when you're talking about Randy sitting in front of the TV, that's like the best example of it. But just the execution of this movie can't be understated, because
Yeah.
that same scene in a different director's hands, it ends up like Scary Movie. Like if you have
Yes.
Randy sitting in front of the TV, talking through Halloween while Ghostface is coming up behind him doing the exact same thing, it doesn't work the way it works in Scream. It works like a YouTube video. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so this is like, that's the difference between this and any other self-referential movie out there, is that it's just so well executed in a way that it's fun, but you still freaking buy it. It's not goofy in a dumb way, which is
Yeah.
so hard to do.
And I feel like, this could be said about a lot of movies, but the script alone, it's very, I don't want to say like high school play, but very low budget. And it's the director and the performances that elevate this to where, like you said, the script would be walking the line of a scary movie and an actual movie, like that kind of satire to what they're making fun of. But then the execution, again, cannot be understated. It is almost, in my opinion, a perfect horror movie. I think.
Totally. And I think you kind of hit on something else there, where it kind of was almost like a high school movie. And it's like Scream is a high school movie. I would almost argue that it's more of like the first true late 90s, early 2000s high school movie than it is a horror movie. Like without
Yes.
this, you don't get Clueless, you don't get Mean Girls, you don't get Legally Blonde. Like this is the spawn of like the high school hangout movie, more than it even is. Obviously it drove horror forward, and that's been talked to death. But like watching this is a high school movie, like maybe even more, a little bit more than it's a horror movie.
Yeah, and honestly, that is one of my complaints with the newer movies and this also is just because of how old this movie is. Obviously, this movie came out 1996. Saying that out loud, I'm like, okay, that's actually not that old. But just the way it looks, it gives off a very low budget feel almost. Like it is a film student's kind of movie. And then when you compare that to like the Scream that came out last year or the Scream that came out a couple of years ago, the reboot, and it's like those are so much more just higher quality cameras and sets and sound. It's just that feels like a movie when this feels much more lower budget and almost even indie like.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I love the look of this movie, but there are times like whenever Sydney's kind of crawling out on the roof, and you're like, where is this being lit from? Like she looks like
Yes.
she looks like she's on a stage. Um, I do really like the look of this, but I think I want to touch on just the use of sound really quick is so great, and
Oh
especially
yeah.
whenever they're in that final sequence. And I forgot how much of it they use Halloween being on the TV. They
Yes.
use like the final Halloween score as the diegetic score while they're being chased around the house. Like you get the doo 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 from
Yep.
Halloween, and then it starts playing over, like almost plays over that whole sequence. That's crazy to just like lift the final score from Halloween, the most influential slasher of all time, and just drop it right in your movie, and it work perfectly.
I mean, yeah, I 100% agree. I wonder how much of that is an homage
Oh, it's
to
totally an homage. Yeah.
yeah, and then also how much of it is just like, okay, well, we can't outdo that, so let's just use it. And then you go, well, okay, well, then how do you incorporate that into the movie? And then you go, oh, well, they're watching Halloween. So it's like layers upon layers of like almost a meta commentary, and then like what slasher movies exist in this universe, and then what slasher movies don't exist, and then just a lot of like how many pop culture references would these characters get that the modern day society and audience would get.
Yeah, and I was considering that too because it's the easiest way to like date your film immediately is by making too many like culturally relevant jokes
Yeah.
in them right away. But Scream like doesn't do that. You know, Scream isn't making jokes or references that are particularly relevant to 1995, 1996. Like, you know, they're referencing Halloween, which came out, you know, decades before. They're talking about Friday the 13th. I mean, I guess they talk, you know, Sharon Stone, but
Yeah.
so many of these things are such iconic things, and they're not so concerned with the specificities of them as much as they are, you know, the rules about Halloween. You still don't even need to have seen Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street to get what they're talking about because it's so much, you know, broader than that. And that's what's so cool about it because for movie lovers, they're going to eat up all the specifics of those references, but as long as you have a general understanding of horror movie culture and just movies in general, pop culture in general, like you're gonna pick up on 90% of what you need. Where I would say if you wait 10 years and then go watch the first Deadpool, you're gonna be it's not gonna hit the same. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that timeless nature to it, even in its references.
Yeah, well, exactly. Because if you put in those references to your time, you date the movie. When if it's this, you take things that were already established at the time, your Friday the 13th, your Halloweens. Those movies are so iconic then. You knew they were going to be iconic now, so
Yes.
people today would still get it. I mean, a
Yes.
great contrast to that is go watch the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man when the artists of the Macy Day Parade are Macy J and Sugar Ray. Like that is so
Mhm.
dated. As soon as you watch that, you're like, oh my god, is this early 2000s? When you compare this, besides the look of the early 90s, I mean, these references and these rules are understood by anybody. I think over the age of 16 at this point.
Yes, I think that's very well said.
Yes, and then kind of wrapping up here, unless there's anything else that you would want to touch on or say, getting into our rating. Obviously, this is going to be pretty high. I think this is probably my third favorite horror movie. I think the only two horror movies that beat this are going to be actually it's my fourth because the three horror movies that are going to beat it are going to be in this order. Halloween is above it, the original. Saw is above it, the
Mm,
original. And my number one, hands down, it has never been a debate for me. My number one favorite movie is John Carpenter's The Thing,
sure,
easily.
sure, sure,
But
sure.
I would give this out of 10, probably a 9. I would go a 9 out of 10 on this one for sure.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think yeah, I think it was a 9 for me the first time I watched it. I think the second time I watched it, I was like, I saw it in a theater, and then Matthew Lillard showed up after that, and I think it was a 10 for me then. And then just watching it again now,
Yeah.
like it's up there. I'm like, if I'm not giving this movie a 10, what the hell am I doing? You know, what movie's a
Yes.
10? So, yeah, sure. If you want to be nitpicky, you can give it a 9. You can give it a 9.5. But I'll give Scream it. I'll be the horror guy. I'll give Scream a 10.
I didn't expect anything less. Great movie. Recommend everyone checks it out. And now going into trailers. There are 3 trailers today. All of them I think are actually pretty
Yep.
interesting. Starting off with one that came out of nowhere for me. Just saw the trailer pop up on my feed this week. I was like, have to talk about this. Gonna be the Bikeriders. This is a new movie coming out starring Austin Butler, Jodie Comer, Tom Hardy, and Michael Shannon. And I'm very interested in this to see where it goes. There's a lot of big actors in this, but I don't know about the source material. It's a little different from what I'd want. It gives off a lot of like West Side Story and The Outsiders vibes.
I was
Just
gonna say,
watching.
I was gonna bring up The Outsiders. That's really
Yes.
funny.
Very much. And then the director's not made a lot of stuff that I've seen. Take Shelter, Mud, and Midnight Special. I don't think I've seen any of those movies. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
The first like 30 seconds of the trailer, I was like all in, and I was just gonna say like it was giving me like I was like, this is The Outsiders, this rocks. And
Yes.
then I was like, I'm still in on it. It kind of like I was still watching it, and I'm like, I just like it kind of like also smelled like stink material. Like I was just like, ooh, is this a really good trailer for like a movie that might be kind of bad?
Yeah.
But I am still excited for it. I don't know what Jodie Comer is trying to do in this movie with her like her accent. Like the
Yes.
whole time she's talking, I'm like,
I
what
want
are
to talk
you
about
like?
a lot of accents in this
I
because
was like,
what is
what
Tom
are you like?
Hardy
What are
doing?
you even trying to do? Like, what's going on? I'm still very excited for this. I think
Oh
this is
yeah.
like, ooh, this looks like it could be. It's like big boomer bust material for me, right? Like, I
Yeah.
don't see a world where this is like a pretty fine movie. I feel like I'm gonna have a pretty solid opinion about it either way.
Yeah, I think 100 you hit the nail on the head there. This is either going to be amazing or it could be so bad it's funny. Like it's that bad. Again, the accents, what is Jodie Comer doing? What is Tom Hardy doing? Everybody knows about the Austin Butler accent with Elvis by now. Hopefully he's finally getting away with that for this movie because I definitely won't be able to take it seriously
I
if
hope
he's
he does
talking
it.
like Elvis in this. Noticing now though on IMDb
I hope he does Elvis in every movie he's
297
in.
reviews, 9 out of 10. Now, that
Mm,
could just be you get invited to see something early. You give it a good review because you
I'll
want to be
check
invited to see
Letterboxd.
other movies early. Interested to see when it comes out, what it gets coming out this year, December 1st. Another movie coming out December 1st that we'll be talking about today that I am extremely excited for. But yeah, I could see this going a lot of different ways. I've never been a fan of your West Side Stories and your Outsiders, but I'll definitely give this a shot.
It has a 3.4 on Letterboxd out of
Out of
5.
10
Out
or
of
out of
5.
5? Out of 5. Okay, so I'm going to
It's a six
assume
eight.
that's a little bit more accurate than the 9 out of 10.
Yes, it looks like David Elric, who I generally align pretty close with, gave it a 3 out of 5.
Okay. Might check again.
So that
It's
is exactly
definitely
right down the middle.
exactly
Opposite of what I
fitting
said.
right in for me at least to a movie where like if I hear good things, I will go see it. If I don't hear good things, I probably will not go see this.
I think I'll see it no matter what.
Well, you'll have to let me know then.
All right, deal.
Jumping on to the next movie, also coming out December 1st. We talked about the trailer, but the teaser trailer, but the full-blown trailer is out now. Godzilla -1. I am now all in. I was pretty much in before. This trailer blew me away and I can't understate that. Looks like amazing going back to the original look of Godzilla of a guy in a suit. Really good special effects looks of destruction and a very good seeming story of, again, Japan after World War II and Godzilla comes in. That is already going to get me in the seat. I mean, I don't know what else to say. This thing blew me away.
Yeah, I think it looks so good. Like it just looks like,
Yes.
oh, this is what we're here for. The special effects look incredible. The way the ground like goes down and then comes shooting up.
Yeah.
It's just like they just get it. This is it.
And yeah, and one thing you're gonna want from a monster movie, and this is something that I've really gotten away from with the I think it's the Warner Brothers Godzilla stuff, except for the first Godzilla 2014. I still think that one holds up pretty well. Is the more realistic looking destruction, and then now you
Yep.
get your Godzilla versus Kong, where it's like you're just seeing them fight, and not to be morbid, but it looks like Godzilla is just wrecking people in this trailer. I mean, he is like
Yeah.
tail swiping crowds of people, just tearing down cities. I am so excited to see this, like going back to the roots with Toho going back to Godzilla instead of more American studios. So yeah, I'm definitely all in. If it was between Bikeriders or this December 1st, I am seeing this.
Oh sure, yeah, I would prioritize this as well. Yeah, and I love it being set back then and not in a modern times. Like it just kind of has everything going for it to me. That's what I really didn't like about Godzilla versus Kong. Like seeing them fight in this like neon city, it just like I just didn't care. This is much more interesting to me.
Yeah, 100%. Glad to see December's already got two very interesting looking movies coming out. And then the final movie, I'm not sure
Yes,
what to think. It is a horror movie and it is
all
directed by
in.
Eli Roth, who I have enjoyed in the past, is Thanksgiving, a slasher movie centered around Thanksgiving. First of all, the cast alone, very weird. Rick Hoffman, who is in most famously probably from Suits. We have Tim Dillon, a comedian I really like in this. And then you have Patrick Dempsey showing up in like Addison Rae, who's a TikTok star. Very confused based on the cast, what's going on here.
I can't wait. This movie has kind of been rumored to be coming out for a while. So, whenever Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez released Grindhouse,
Yeah.
which is a double feature with Planet Terror and Death Proof, there's like trailers built into it, which are all fake trailers. Rob Zombie did one, Edgar Wright, Jason Eisner, and Eli Roth did one. And Eli Roth did one for a movie called Thanksgiving, which was fictitious at the time in 2007. And then he kind of has been kicking around making that into a real movie all this time, and now it's happened. So it's so cool to kind of have, you can go back and you can watch the original Grindhouse trailer version of it and then compare it to this one. I can't wait. This is like my shit. Like whenever I go back and watch all these, you know, VHS only quality horror movies from the 70s and 80s that you can hardly get your hands on.
Yeah.
I'm just like, they don't make them like this anymore. Like this is them making them like that now. So this is like my stuff. So I can't wait for this.
I kind of figured this would be right up your alley. I've enjoyed Eli Roth stuff mainly. I like Cabin Fever, his original one, not the remake. And then also obviously just his performances in Inglourious Bastards alone is going to be something to talk about. But yeah, interested from the director, interested to see where it goes. I did not know the whole background about the Grindhouse trailer that's getting made into an actual movie now. So now I'm a little bit more excited for this, coming out November 17th this year, getting into that Thanksgiving time period. Obviously, you're going to have to do that.
Yep.
I'd be into this. Again, very much feeling like a movie where if it's getting good reviews, I will probably go see it. Would love to hear what you have to think about it because I know you will be seeing this. So definitely interested for when it comes out.
I will definitely be seeing it as soon as possible. Can you name any other Thanksgiving-based horror movies?
I know there are a couple. The only one that I can think of is, I think it's called Thanksgiving, which is like a really crappy meme one.
The best one, and it depends how you want to classify a Thanksgiving horror movie, because you could make the argument that like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a Thanksgiving movie, but if you want to get down to it, the best one that's a true Thanksgiving horror movie is 1987 Blood Rage. It is incredible movie. It is just off the rails, has the best quote ever. That's not cranberry sauce, that's blood, and it burns. So Blood Rage.
Well, what is better than, because my personal favorite one-liner, and only because of the performance, is Garbage Day from Silent Night Deadly Night 2. That's a good one.
That's also a good one. Yeah. Good pull there.
I've got a couple in the chamber, but yeah, interested to see. I'm assuming this is going to take over the new Thanksgiving horror movie because I think all the other ones are just a lot older. I can't remember the last time a Thanksgiving horror movie, like a mainstream one, came out. So definitely interested to see where this one goes.
Yes, sir.
And then finishing up this week, we are done with our decade-defining movies. I said I would find a new list. I found a list that I am surprised at how good it is. Now, this is going to be the biggest Oscar snubs of all time. However, we're not covering every category. This is specifically Best Picture only. I've looked through the list. I agree with a lot of the ones on here, including my number one biggest Best Picture snub of all time, which if you know me, you probably know what it is already. I'm interested to see if Reese will know what it is. But let's get into these. And the first one I think I agree with this first one. And it is in 1977, Annie Hall won Best Picture over Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars guy. Love the original trilogy. I'm almost wondering if it's because we look back on these Star Wars movies with their cultural impact, but at the same time, Star Wars made $700 million that year. That is a big movie for 1977.
Yeah, I mean, it's the big, probably and culturally now the biggest movie ever. But didn't Return of the Jedi get it? And then that was kind of like the take back, right? It was
Let
like
me see.
I want to say Return of the Jedi won Best Picture as kind of a like, okay, here's just kind of the consolation prize for the whole trilogy because it's pretty widely agreed
I
that that's the worst one out of the three.
let's see.
Although I
Let's
love Return of the Jedi.
keep talking so I can go find it real quick.
Big Ewok guy over here. Love
Okay,
it.
I can't agree with that. That is downright horrendous.
I like the Ewoks. I think the Ewoks are cool, but I love the Jabba's Palace thing. That ties back into what I was
See,
talking about
that's
in
the thing.
Scream. That works as its own short film. That works as a short film. You could have the beginning of that movie up through whenever they blow up Jabba's barge, and then that could be it. And that could be a 20-minute movie, right? I love whenever
Yes.
movies open with their first act, their first sequence, their first 20 minutes, whatever, that are their own thing. And they could be their own short film, and it sets the premise really well and then you go. The best example I have of that outside of Scream would be a very underrated movie because it got dumped in a merger in 2020. The Empty Man is a horror movie and it is incredible and no one's seen it. I don't even know if you can see it on anything because it didn't get a physical media release and I think it got
Ooh.
dumped off Max. So if you can find The Empty Man, check it out.
I've got bad news. We need to find out what Reese was smoking because Return of the Jedi did not even get nominated for Best
Well,
Picture.
I thought it got something. I thought it got some consolation prize.
I'm sure it got special effects or something like that, but it did not win Best Picture, which I would
Okay.
agree with because of the original trilogy. In my opinion, Return of the Jedi is the worst one.
Okay, well then maybe you can say it was more of a snub, but I was kind of like, well, didn't it kind of get a one back? All right, fair enough. Annie Hall, I can't say I've seen Annie Hall to be honest,
I can't
but
either.
people love their Annie Hall. It's a classic as well, so it's much more of a Oscar bait movie anyway. Than I think
Yeah,
it's hard to imagine Star Wars winning off the cuff. Like it kind of had
I
to
mean,
reinvent that. So
yeah, but at the same time, I mean, that's the best science fiction film to come out probably ever at that time.
totally, but
Obviously,
still, like people weren't they weren't conditioned for that, right? And so like
no,
they still
exactly.
had to be. I kind of am almost surprised it got nominated. Like it just feels like it would have been such a phenomenon, but it'd be the equivalent of like Endgame getting nominated now. Where you're like, well, clearly that's not
See,
going to get it.
I would disagree and say we've seen the exact same thing happen last year with Top Gun Maverick getting nominated for Best
Yeah,
Picture.
but now we've been through all the Star Warses that have been nominated, so now it's
Yes,
like it's more acceptable. Then that probably was such a precedent. I say this like I'm speaking great. I know all this Oscar history trivia, which I don't.
we
Okay,
have a
I
man
think
from the Academy here.
yes, not from the
But no,
Academy.
yeah, it's definitely. I think it's very much us looking back on it now, like the cultural
Looking back,
significance.
yes, I agree.
Yes, that it should have won at the time. Maybe I got to see Annie Hall to understand that.
Well, we'll do Annie Hall next week.
And next up, again, very much agree with this because My Fair Lady in 1967 beat Doctor Strangelove. I've seen Doctor Strangelove. I love Doctor Strangelove. It is one of my favorite Kubricks of all time. Peter Sellers kills it. I 100% agree that it should have won Best Picture.
I would say even more so than Annie Hall over Star Wars. That Doctor Strangelove definitely had the lasting impression
Yes.
of those two. So
Especially nowadays with, the war that's going on and the threat of nuclear weapons, definitely just the cultural relevance. I know a lot of people have not seen that movie. I definitely recommend it. It's surprisingly funny for a very old comedy movie, in my opinion. But yeah, I think that is a big snub.
word.
Next up, I have not seen either of these, and if you haven't seen them either, we're skipping right over it. But The Greatest Show on Earth beat High Noon.
Oh, like back in the original The Greatest Show on Earth. Is
Yes.
that the one where the train falls off the track? Like that was the one that's in the Fablemans, right?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, no opinion.
No opinion. Haven't seen them.
It seems
Next
like
up,
Steven Spielberg has one, but not me.
definitely. Next up, though, this is a very modern one. Green Book wins over Roma. I would agree. I would agree. I don't think Green Book should have won. I think Roma was the much better picture. Although I am kind of happy Roma did not win because then you get Parasite to be the first foreign language film to win Best Picture a couple years after, and we finally get that foreign language win. But yeah, Green Book I mean, you want to talk about Oscar bait movies? That is the definition of an Oscar bait movie.
Have you ever heard anybody talk about Green Book
No,
outside
that's the
of
thing too. It's like,
outside of talking about why it won the Oscar?
yeah, exactly. I mean, you bring in, Viggo Mortensen coming back. Obviously, he was a big name from Lord of the Rings. You put him with Mahershala Ali, a big up and coming actor at that time, and you make it about civil rights in the South in the civil rights era. You can't name a bigger Oscar bait movie. I can't believe it got it hook, line, and sinker, but that's what happens.
That's what happens.
Next
You'll have
up,
that Coda.
ooh, I would agree with that too, but that is not on this list. This one I definitely agree with. I still to this day cannot believe this one. I like both movies, but The King's Speech should not have won over The Social Network.
What else was nominated that year? Yeah, I agree.
Let me look that up real
social,
quick.
the
I
Social
will
Network
find
2010 Oscars.
83rd Oscars, Academy Awards. Let's go to Best Picture. King's Speech won. It was Black Swan, The Fighter, Inception, Kids Are All Right, 127 Hours, Social Network, Toy Story 3, True Grit, and Winter's Bone. A lot of good movies that year, actually. I would have, honestly, over The King's Speech, I would have liked to see The Fighter, Inception, which I know you can't agree with, or The Social Network. Any of those three taking it, I think, would have been a better option than King's Speech.
Fair.
But, doesn't always go that way.
It rarely does, honestly.
Next up, I don't know about this one. I definitely think.
Ooh.
I don't know if it's a big snub because next up is Forrest Gump beating Pulp Fiction. I think they're both great movies.
Forrest Gump sucks.
Okay. I do think Pulp Fiction is better, but I don't know if I can consider it a snub. I actually recently saw a interview with Quentin Tarantino when he talked about the Oscars that year, and when I think he said Steven Spielberg pulled him aside and told him that Zemeckis was going to win for Forrest Gump and Best Director, but he was going to win screenplay for Pulp Fiction. That's exactly what happened. I think he should win director and Best Picture over Zemeckis and Forrest Gump, but I can understand why he didn't. It's his first big movie into the scene.
It's just not the way the Academy works.
Exactly. It's those old Academy of folks that are going to toss people a bone that have been there for a while, and I can understand why it happens. Not saying I'm a fan of it.
Hey, I like Robbie Z as much as the next guy, but Forrest Gump, one of the most overrated movies ever. So
I can understand that. Really quickly jumping away from this list, though.
Shawshank Redemption. Go on.
Excuse me. But jumping really quickly, I want to know your thoughts on this because I am almost certain the answer is 1 to 2 years. How soon after Robert Zemeckis dies are we getting a Back to the Future reboot?
I think, did we talk about this before?
We might have.
I think, yeah, hopefully never. But yeah, that seems almost inevitable, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I would almost like to see it in some other iteration if they're going to do it. Like, make it a mini series or something, or kind of like some kind of anthology or something, like this old serialized miniseries or something where they're kind of bouncing around all the time, and there's a light through line, but make it more like a wacky Saturday morning adventure thing. Give it a little bit of a different flavor.
I could see that.
Personally,
but what I don't want to see is them basically doing Ready Player One, which
we don't want that.
Was very close to basically being a Back to the Future reboot with how many throwaway jokes and gags there were in that. But yeah, hopefully they don't butcher it like that.
Yeah, let's hope so.
And next up, definitely agree with this movie. Definitely a movie a lot of people make fun of because of what it is about. But Crash, terrible movie, beat out Brokeback Mountain. That is downright disrespectful, honestly. Crash is awful. I will die on that hill. It was the worst movie nominated that year, and the fact that it beat out Brokeback Mountain is a shame.
What was all nominated? That was like what, 2004?
That was the 78th Oscars. I'm pulling it up. Wikipedia. Best Picture, Crash, which won. Boo. Yeah. Brokeback Mountain should have won. Capote could have seen that winning as well. Good Night and Good Luck, and Munich.
It was kind of a weak year.
I mean, yeah, but
overall,
it's incredibly weak. But the fact that won.
Well, yeah, that's
Even especially, I know that well, I know it's not always a thing, but usually whoever wins Best Director wins Best Picture. Ang
Right.
Lee won Best Director that year for Brokeback Mountain, didn't get Best Picture. Kind of odd, in my opinion, but
kind of suspicious.
A little bit suspicious. I wonder why. Interesting. Next up, 2 movies I have not seen. Driving Miss Daisy beat My Left Foot.
I haven't seen My Left Foot.
Okay, well then not much. Have you seen Driving Miss Daisy?
No.
Okay, well then we'll skip right over those. Although I feel like Driving Miss Daisy isn't also one of those Oscar bait movies. Wouldn't know for sure though.
Yeah, I've never heard anything great about Driving Miss Daisy. Again, it always just seems like it's one of those movies that's like generally regarded to be like pretty overrated.
Yeah, the only time I've ever heard of it is like when I drive my mom around. She's like, "Oh, you're driving Miss Daisy." I'm like, "God, you're old." I'm kidding. I love you, Mom. Next up, Gandhi beat E.T. I can agree that is a bit of a snub. E.T. again, though, is it just looking back on this with hindsight of how big and culturally significant E.T. became?
Nah, E.T. rips.
I would agree. It's a great movie. I think it should have beat Gandhi.
Yep.
Since you say it rips, I would agree that this is a snub, not just looking back on it.
Agreed. E.T. banger. I mean, you can't beat it. Not even Gandhi. I guess he did though. So
I guess he did once. Next up, another 2 movies I have not seen. Around the World in 80 Days beating Giant.
Yeah, I haven't seen either. Kind of embarrassing, but
we'll skip over. We are on to the final 2. And honestly, this list is a great list. I've agreed with a lot of things that have been on here and think they deserve to be on here. These next 2 are actually my number 1 and 2 biggest snubs of all time. First one is the biggest snub for a lot of people. How Green Was My Valley beating Citizen Kane. Criminal. That is absolutely criminal.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, Citizen Kane has gone down as one of the best films of all time. It is an older movie. I love Citizen Kane, and the fact that How Green Is My Valley beat it, kind of ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny how that works out. Yeah, because no one's talking about How Green Is My Valley these days, but Citizen Kane, that one, pretty good.
Very similar to Green Book and Roma.
Very similar.
And then number 1, biggest snub of all time, Shakespeare in Love beat Saving Private Ryan. That is disgraceful that happened. That is a joke.
What was all that year?
So I actually know a lot about this one because it is my number 1. And I don't know everything that I was nominated that year, but I do know that Thin Red Line was also nominated. So I'm wondering if it's the World War II movies split the votes. Gotcha. And then Shakespeare in Love won off of that. But again, Best Director that year was Steven Spielberg for Saving Private Ryan, and it doesn't win Best Picture.
Right, yeah, it was how that happens. Elizabeth, Life is Beautiful, Saving Private Ryan, Thin Red Line, and Shakespeare in Love. That's a good point. That is a good point. I like Saving Private Ryan quite a bit. I have my issues with it, but yes, I think that's a good call.
I mean, you talk about the best World War II movies of all time. That is, in my opinion, the number 1. The fact that it lost to a movie that nobody talks about, and in my opinion, I've seen parts of it and is not very good, or at least doesn't hold up to Saving Private Ryan. I can see why people would consider that a snub.
Yeah, I definitely can see why it's considered a snub, and I won't go into my issues with Saving Private Ryan because I feel like we'll get into that some other time. So
we will definitely get it one of these times. But that is going to be into that list. Maybe we'll get a list for next week. Maybe we'll not. We'll have to just wait and see. However, before we go, we are going to be doing our wheel spin of the week. Obviously, we've got the list up here, so let us see what we land on. There it goes.
Spin that wheel.
Where is it going to land? Here it comes, coming down to the wire. We are going to get.
Scream again.
We are going to get the original Top Gun.
Wow.
Interesting. I'm actually really interested to see this now and compare it to the new one. I have not seen this one in probably like 5 or 6 years.
Oh, wow.
Although I know that you can be my wingman anytime. So I'm excited to see that. We will be covering that next week. But that is going to be coming to the end of the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a like. If you want to add to any of these discussions, drop a comment down below. And if you want to stay up to date with our content, please consider subscribing. We get a podcast out once a week. And as always, we will see you next week.
Peace.